I got to start by saying that one of the great things about working at Pembina in general, but working in spaces like renewables and CDR, is you meet so many amazingly smart people, but rarely is there a bio that makes me feel so, I don't know, like I've done nothing with my life at this point. So, I mean, on that note, we're going to start with Phil. So we're just going to dive right into the stakes. We only have 30 minutes, and I don't want to be the first person to run over on time today. So Phil, why was Deep Sky interested in building your first project in Alberta, and what were the biggest factors that went into making that decision?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so for those who don't know who Deep Sky is, we are a technology agnostic project developer and owner operator of direct air capture projects. It's a mouthful. We're an oil and gas company in reverse. We take CO2 out of the air, we use renewable energy, put it underground. And we were founded by Fred Lalonde and Joost Overkerk. They're co-founders of a company called Hopper, $5 billion tech company based out of Montreal. When they started, they looked around at this incredibly rich ecosystem and saw that there were all these brilliant technology developers, many of whom are in the room today, that kept hitting a wall. Where do we store the CO2? How do we get access to clean renewable power to do it? How do we permit? How do we build projects? How do we do the thing at a bigger scale? And so Deep Sky was founded with the mission and purpose to fill that gap, to build projects, to commercialize those projects, to generate carbon credits, to help corporations do what they can't, which is remove CO2 out of the atmosphere. And because our founders were based in Montreal, actually the government of Quebec is a shareholder in Deep Sky. We initially had plans to build in Montreal, but and in Quebec, but became very quickly apparent that in fact Quebec was not necessarily ready for the carbon removal industry. And where was ready? Alberta, because of the incredible amount of geologic storage that is well known, well characterized, and has been operated and done here for years, because of the incredible talent. If we're an oil and gas company in reverse, we're better to find the pipe fitters, the welders, the engineers, the fluid mechanics, the technicians than here. And of course, it can be very sunny. And we were very, very lucky to be able to get one of the very few virtual power purchase agreements for a solar project to entirely power our project using renewables. So how did we end up at Innisfail? Through incredible help from our friends at Invest Alberta. If there's anyone here who is not from Alberta and is looking to build projects and build businesses in Alberta, please speak to our friends at Invest Alberta. They helped us do a search. They helped us do a competitive RFP to reach out to different communities. And one community stood up above the rest, and that was Innisfail. From the moment that we visited this incredible community in a place that you couldn't ask for a better location to be set up, right off of a main highway, with a rich history of being at the forefront of innovation and of new energy technologies. I don't want to spoil it, but I'll let Mayor Jean talk about the incredible other projects that are happening in the community, like hydrogen train retrofitting, which is so cool. And we were in a place that was already industrially zoned, was ready to go, greenfield, and the people, and when it comes to the councillors, to the mayor, to everyone who works in the administration, they just got it. They just got it. We went to other municipalities and other places in Alberta, and they were like, wait, why do you want to take CO2? What do you want to do with it? How does that work? Are you sure? How do I make some money from that? But they just got it. And so we're thrilled to be in Innisfail. We couldn't ask for a better home. And in fact, I didn't realize this because one of the partners that are coming are from the UK, and I realized later that Innisfail, Isle of Destiny, and so this is our Isle of Destiny.
I think that's a great setup to go over to Mayor Jean. Mayor, what were some of the key challenges for the town of Innisfail right now, and how do you see clean technology projects like Deep Sky Alpha fit in as potential opportunities?
Sure. So just before I get going here, thank you, Phil, for all those wonderful words, but I'd also like to say our Chief Administrative Officer, Todd Becker, is with us today, and my council colleague, Janice Wing. They're sitting at table number 6. So it was really a team effort bringing Deep Sky in, and a lot of that work was done by administration, of course. But, challenges, I would say just the size of our community. I always refer to us as a mid-sized town as opposed to a small town, because I hate that little phrase, but it's difficult to get noticed. How many people would think there's a community along the QE2 in the heart of central Alberta that is really trying to drive innovation and welcome innovative emerging technologies into the community? I don't think that's what we would typically think, or the broader range of the audience would typically think that's what would be happening in Innisfail. And I think we really piggybacked off of the hydrogen locomotive work that's going on. That's done by a local business. CPKC, of course, is retrofitting some of their diesel locomotives to hydrogen. I think they've done 4 or 5 now. They're out running on the tracks and hauling loads, and there's recently a fairly significant order that has come in, and I think that will just keep on growing. So that really was a catalyst to us, thinking about what can we be as a community. And we hosted the Energy Futures Lab for a year. That created some community conversation. Out of that, we developed a Power of Place community economic development strategy. And the Power of Place really held 2 connotations. One was power, because we know how important electricity is to investment attraction. And of course, with the renewables that are located in our community, but also the power of place. So really the culture and the community and everything that makes the community so great. And then we developed the Innisfail Energy Hub as well. So that's a policy paper that we have, and sets out some parameters of what we're trying to do around that. And a lot of that is community conversation and education around energy, and even like new innovations like Deep Sky and what they're doing. So those are probably the challenges as a stereotype, and I know our administration team has worked really hard. I think all of us have worked really hard in being out there and telling our story, and we're open for business, and we move at the speed of business, right? And that's I think a phrase that my friend Sean Collins from Varma Energy coined about us, because we've had discussions with Varma about waste to energy, and I think everybody's been surprised at how fast the town administration team moves. They don't move at the speed of government, they move at the speed of business, and that's really important.
I just want to stay on that for a second. For other mid-sized towns out there who are thinking about getting into this, I like how you laid out the progress of work that you've put in to get to this place. Do you have any recommendations for a starting place for other mid-sized towns?
I would say mindset would be the first place to start, right? Like going back to what Phil said, they had discussions with other communities and a lot of questions. I know even with us around our Varma Energy project, or the desire to have them in our community, some of those discussions that have taken place with other municipalities, it doesn't move at the speed of business. And I say, set your policies and your regulations, be responsive, but then get out of the way and let the experts take over.
I think that's great advice. For most of you who don't know me personally, a lot of my family lives in the Innisfail region. They're farmers actually in between Innisfail and Olds. So I had the pleasure of last summer heading out for our family reunion. And now lots of times my family likes to give me a hard time about the renewable work I do. So I was wondering, how was this new CDR thing going to be going over? And honestly, I was quite surprised that immediately my family knew I was working on it and started asking questions about it. They were really excited about it, and the sense I got was that they saw it as another industrial project. What has your experience been with the community, and how do you think Deep Sky and this opportunity is being seen?
Well, there was some, interest in it, shall we say, and I think Deep Sky did a tremendous job. So after they made the announcement, we were so excited about that. And, there was a lot of questions around what they were doing, of course, because, typically your general community, probably including councillors, we're not the experts in this area. So Deep Sky came in and they did 2 consecutive days of an open house, 3 hours each day. They brought the whole team in, and they had, I will call them learning stations set up. So as opposed to doing a presentation, they had learning stations, and there was members of the team at each table. So people could come in and ask questions directly. We didn't have to worry about, somebody wanting to disrupt or anything. And I think since that time, it has been completely quiet from any negativity that I see anyway, and people are very, very excited about it. And I think from a town's perspective, Deep Sky, along with the hydrogen locomotives, now Deep Sky, they've really put us onto a map for other technologies as well, and we're getting noticed more.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, I think it speaks to the importance of community engagement. Especially technology developers. I'm a scientist by training myself. You make a technology, you're like, oh, this is fixing a problem. Of course, everyone wants this problem fixed. We got to just go fix this problem. I'm going to fix the problem here and here and here. And we take for granted that maybe the people there don't understand what the problem is, or they don't have comfort with how you're fixing it. And maybe you should have a conversation first. And so every single project that Deep Sky does, one of the first people that we hired on our team was a VP of Government Relations, Public Policy, and Community Engagement. Why? Because it's so important to build these projects in partnership with the community that's there. That open house that we had that ran over 2 days in this beautiful library, by the way, this beautiful library in Innisfail, and it was packed. It was standing room only. You couldn't move a few feet without bumping into somebody. And the questions that people had were just so genuine and intelligent and thoughtful. Some of things were how does carbon dioxide removal work, and explain to me what it means when you store it underground, and is that going to cause an earthquake? It's not. All of these sorts of things I live in the community. I just want to make sure that it's not going to be too loud. Can you tell me about the decibel reading? To are you hiring? Here's my resume, and everything in between. And one of the most fun experience, being part of a startup in a market that is emerging, where customers don't know what they want to buy, and it's really hard to sell things. Can be hard some days. But some of the best days I've had in this company so far has been in the community, because the reception and just the energy, the questions, it just blew me away.
It's great seeing the relationship between Deep Sky and Innisfail. I actually want to kind of take the same question that I asked Mayor Barclay. What would your piece of advice be to the developers in the room that might be going out to deal with mid-sized towns?
Yeah, number one, be curious and think about what you can do for the community, not what the community can do for you. We often, especially in CDR, I think a lot of people here are driven by purpose and not necessarily by money. We could all quit and go into crypto or something and then try to make our money that way, but we don't, because there's something that's existential that's facing us, and we want to do good, and we want to create value for ourselves, for our businesses, for our communities. And so starting from that place of we're all people, we have to understand why we're doing this, be curious about it, and then think about what you can do for that community, not how are you going to help me accelerate permitting, or what tax incentive breaks can I get, all these sorts of things. It should be about what can we build together, and why is that going to be just the best thing in the world.
So do you think, I'm going to start with Phil, then we'll go to Mayor Barclay on this. Do you think that there is an advantage to doing these kind of projects in a province like Alberta that has a deep history with the industrial activity? And I don't mean so much on the skills, I think that was great that you hit, but on the acceptance of these kind of new technologies.
Yeah, and you spoke about it earlier, right, with your own family. People are aware, they understand what an industrial project looks like. There's an entrepreneurial can-do attitude about Alberta, and that is real, right? And you feel it. You feel it when you try to build here. It's a province of builders, and so it's just a lot easier because you don't have to explain what it is you're building. You just have to or why you're building it. It's more about how do we get this done.
Are you doing it right? Mayor Barclay?
Yeah, I think, change is always interesting, right? And we were talking at lunchtime, and probably most people in the room aren't old enough for this story, but you know, the Alberta Oil Sands Research and Technology Authority back in the day, and how angry the conventional oil drillers were about these miners were going to come in and start mining in the oil sands. And you know, the government of the day, Peter Lougheed, great visionary, great leadership, and he believed in government investing in a project that would make the, you know, would be disruptive, I guess, would be the best word, disruptive innovation, as opposed to investing in something that might make incremental changes. And so, you know, SAGD was developed, and then in situ projects, and, you know, maybe 10 years later, Sarah Hastings-Simon, who a lot of people in this room know, she did a policy paper for the School of Public Policy at the U of A on this subject, and a lot of lessons can be learned from those times. And there's a little paragraph in there about somebody who was part of this group from the north, and somebody at the Calgary Petroleum Club who was a traditional driller was trying to get them kicked out of the petroleum club because they weren't really oil people. So you think fast forward, here we are in 2025, you know, record production, record revenues, record exports out of the oil sands, and so when somebody believes in something, and everybody can come together, government, academia, and industry, and let the experts lead, there's incredible things that can happen. So we need to embrace what we have before us right now, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I really love that positive vision, right? And a positive vision of the future. One of my favorite anecdotes from that time was when Peter Lougheed was proposing the SAGD, they interviews with conventional oil drillers who said, you know, government shouldn't spend money on anything. You want to see more oil, give us that 100 million and we'll show you more oil. And I like to think about how if we had followed that, where we'd be now versus what we've seen. Mayor Barclay, I'm going to stay with you. Can you describe the economic benefits that these types of projects or this projects bring to a community? I mean, across jobs and tax revenue and knock-on business.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, Deep Sky, as Phil said, you know, I asked what you can do for the community. So they've been very involved in community events. There's also local hiring, of course. I think they've been very focused on hiring local. One of the first people they've hired is actually out of the oil business, I believe, and was actually retired, but was so excited about this project, decided to unretire and come to work for Deep Sky. We have relationships, of course, with our schools, with Red Deer Polytechnique, and I know there's been discussions with Deep Sky and Red Deer Polytechnique, and you know, maybe some educational opportunities for learning that skill set going forward. And I know when they open here in June, July, that I know the schools are probably very excited about getting some tours through Deep Sky. So, you know, and then there's the staff and the construction crew. There's been reach out to the local community to participate in construction, and you know that these people are there building, and while they're there, they're in our restaurants, they're staying in Innisfail, and so, you know, it's a whole gamut of things, and they've been very, very supportive of the community and very focused on local, which we're grateful for.
That's amazing. Phil, building off that, what role do you see for project developers in developing a base of skilled workers within the regions that you're trying to operate in?
It's a great question, and so when we think about carbon removal, especially what we're trying to do, which is direct air capture with geologic storage, you really have to find that intersection of geologic storage and renewable power. And oftentimes that intersection is not in places with lots of population. And so when we think about the base of skilled workers that we want to train, to build, to deploy, well, one is finding where those people are already, and I spoke a bit about why Alberta is such a great place to be. And the other piece is to create ways and mechanisms to upskill and to bring them along. But then also it's to work in partnership, for example, with Indigenous communities that are in these rural and remote areas to ensure that there's opportunity and creation and value creation for those communities as well. Another one of the projects that we're looking to develop is based in Quebec. We're negotiating right now an agreement, a collaboration agreement with the Wabanaki First Nation there. Today, actually just today, earlier today, we had an Indigenous land blessing at the Deep Sky Alpha Innisfail site. And so we had a knowledge keeper. We've engaged with knowledge keepers across all of the different sites that we're looking at, so that we have a real and true community engagement across all the nations in that community. And so to take a step back, that's one of the things that I find so exciting about building a new industry, what everyone in this room is trying to do. A new industry means new opportunities. It means building something that wasn't there before. And because of that, because of all the work that you're doing, it means that there's going to be a new industry, new jobs, new value. And jobs are important, of course, but I can fall asleep at night knowing that I'm working on something that hopefully will make this place a better world for my kids and eventually my grandkids and all these sorts of things. And when people feel that sense of purpose in the work that they do better work.
I think that's such an important point, and I think everybody in this room has experienced that to some degree, right? Even on some of the hardest days, you're pushing for something. Phil, I want to stay with you for a second, looking forward. How has the decision criteria for project siting changed as you look towards the next project? And were there any learnings from this one?
So many learnings. It's a really great, many learnings. But I talked about finding the intersection of geologic storage and renewable power. It's also about understanding where we can get access to the CCUS investment tax credit, which we've heard about a lot today. The reality is a lot of people will say, CDR, this new space, can you exist without government support, without incentives, subsidies, tax credits? And I'm honest, no, we can't. We can't, not yet. But what industry has, right? You talked about SAGD earlier, $100 million to get that industry started. We think about internet, telecoms, electricity. Governments have been around subsidizing the birth of new industries. That's what they're there for. That's part of it. To catalyze that private capital so that we can grow and we can multiply. And so a big piece of that is where can we get get access to that CCUS investment tax credit? Climatic conditions is actually another huge piece of it too. The air is the air, but the air is not the same everywhere. Sometimes it's colder, sometimes it's hotter, sometimes it's more humid, sometimes it's more dry. And depending on the kind of technology, that has a huge impact on its ability to operate, which is exactly why we built Deep Sky Alpha in the first place. You wouldn't buy a car unless you test drove it. We're not going to put hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars of capital at risk if we don't at least operate these things and these technologies and figure out which ones work. Someone told me the other day that you're building the DAC Olympics in Innisfail, and I loved it. So we got to build our DAC Olympics. We got to figure out who the winners are, and that'll dictate another part of where we're gonna go. But as a company, we have identified over a dozen different locations across Canada, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, in British Columbia, Manitoba, and Quebec, that are primed and ready to go. It's just about bringing together that use case, engaging with the community, with government officials, and figuring out where's the best place and the economics of it. Really, how does that pan out?
I really like that, and I think we should talk about this DAC Olympics after. I think there's something we can definitely do there. Mayor Barclay, entrepreneurial, I'm gonna skip that word because apparently I can't say it today. Entrepreneurial is right in the town's mission. What is the town considering around attracting new potential projects as you look at the next opportunity?
Well, we do have a new industrial park. That's where Deep Sky is located, so it's ready. Anybody interested? But I think when it comes to entrepreneurial, I think again it goes back to mindset, and one thing I wanted to focus on is our toolbox for creating revenue for the municipality is very narrow. So what can we do as a municipality to generate revenue and increase that top line without always having to go to the taxpayer? So I think the renewable project that we spoke about at the beginning, I believe that was 2018-19, that's a 21 megawatt project, pretty small in this day and age, on 100 acres, but it generated a significant amount of cash every year for our revenue. And so I think it's a matter of us being open for business, having an open mindset. Back in the day, I remember somebody said to me, the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind, and I think that is so true. So we need to be open, and we need to act entrepreneurial, even though we're government and we're regulatory and we deliver services to the community, and pretty much none of those divisions create positive returns because, you know, you're paving roads and sidewalks and doing wastewater and water and parks and trails, like those are not revenue generating divisions, but so where we're going to succeed is through growth. And I think Innisfail, we have a fairly significant industrial sector for a community our size, and we really punch above our weight in that regard, and that helps a lot for us, for our sustainability.
Yeah, and I don't think it can be understated if you're not from Alberta how much I think the profile of Innisfail has really skyrocketed in the last few years. And you mentioned a number of projects as you got to Deep Sky, and then I think the Deep Sky partnership has just turbocharged it. Before we see if there's one or two audience questions, I wanted to end with, and I had you both give advice to your kind of counterparts in the space, but now opening up to everything, do you have any advice for developers on your side, Mayor Barclay, or community leaders from Phil, to successfully collaborate? Like any lesson that you'd like to leave them with?
Well, I don't know if there's any other government people in the room, but you know, I'd say be responsive, right? That's one thing I think you often hear about government or complain about government. It's slow and it's not responsive enough. And even now we hear around a housing conversation in Canada and the development permits and how slow that is. And so if you want to deal with companies like a Deep Sky or whoever in this day and age, like we need to accelerate things and speed things up. And I don't know from the development side, I think it's a collaboration. So when we met Deep Sky, of course, they always meet with administration first, and be very honest with you, it's not, you know, necessarily very often that we get to meet with somebody that's thinking about setting up an Innisfail. That would be dealt with administration because that developer typically wants confidentiality. And but we were brought in with Deep Sky fairly early and met Damien Steele and Jason Van der Leyden with Deep Sky, and I think everybody was excited, and I'm so fortunate with my council colleagues because they have a wonderful mindset as well. It's not like there's half of them that have closed minds and the others don't. I think we're definitely all on the same page, and we're all excited about this kind of development. So I would say just open-mindedness and quick response.
Those are fantastic pieces of advice, and I guess maybe the only thing I could add to that would be if you're a municipality and looking to develop projects, speak to
Innisfail.
Speak to Innisfail. Honestly, no, but really, though, speak. Same thing as if you're a project developer, come reach out. The best way to accelerate progress is to speak to people who have done it before and to avoid the battle scars that they have and learn what they've learned. So keeping an open mind, of course, but then also being collaborative and communicative and just asking for advice, because you know that's some of the most valuable things that we can do to help each other is just talk to one another and share our stories.
No, I think that's such a great point, especially so early in an industry. It was nowhere close to being the competition ending it. And I think there's much more value in if we can push out the lessons learned across these communities and these projects as quickly as possible. We do have 2 minutes left, so I will see if my team can run around if there are any questions for our two amazing panelists today.
Hey, great discussion. I have family from rural Alberta. I'm from rural Alberta. How do we replicate this further on? Like, can you say more about using Innisfail as sort of a template to scale this further out? Because I know in my family there's some pushback, there's some skepticism. Just wondering some best practices and what, like anything that happened in the engagement where sort of a light bulb went off with communities to feel like this is a real win for us.
Yeah, I would think, well, Phil, I mean, he's done the work, but I think the public engagement is so important. And you know, I go back, if you ever Google what people thought of the Wright brothers when they were trying to build a what did they call it, a flying contraption or something, like they say to themselves, because everybody thought they were a bunch of kooks, and they know, but everybody thought they were crazy. So, and now you look at where we are with flight. So I think it's, you know, progress will continue whether we're participating in it or not. And right now, like I said, we have a generational opportunity in this province and in this country to latch on to a lot of this development and the expertise that we're so blessed to have. And if we don't take advantage of this, well, you know what? Somebody else will do it. So, you know, small communities, mid-sized communities, you know, if we want to be something more than a place you live to commute to a larger center, then we need to develop this and move forward with it.
During the community engagement process, there was, you know, a few vocal minority of folks who were against the project, or at least at face value. Skeptical is probably the best way to put it. And what I found to be the most effective was just listening, understanding and trying to be empathetic towards what was the source of the skepticism. You know, I had some folks who were saying, if you take CO2 out of the atmosphere, will that impact my crops? You know, our crops need CO2 to grow. And it was actually, it's a great question. You know, not to dismiss it, but to be like, that's a great question. The amount of CO2 that we're removing from the atmosphere is relatively low. The atmosphere is really good at mixing. Imagine a giant pool. If you take a droplet of food coloring and you put it into the pool, it disperses right away. It's the same thing here in reverse. Allaying people's fears, because especially in this digital age, we live in these digital bubbles where there's lots of misinformation that can get and that you can get exposed to, and that you can be hard to break out of, and you build up this idea of the other side, and it's very rare in this day and age where we have a forum where we can speak to people who maybe don't have the same views as us. And that one of the reasons why I love that community engagement in town hall is because I spoke to people who perhaps didn't share the same views I had on climate change, but what they responded with was the community development, economic development opportunity, the entrepreneurialism. I had folks who were just curious and didn't understand, or perhaps were misinformed, and just being empathetic and listening to them. And then, you know, frankly, there were a very, very, very small minority of people who were just contrarian, that's just how it was. And treating them with respect, it's hard to yell at someone when they just smile at you. You know, when they genuinely are just trying to listen, and there's another person at that. It's easy to type an angry tweet, but it's harder to yell at someone when they really are genuinely trying to give you the time of the day.
I don't know how we could end it better than that. So please join me in thanking this amazing panel. Thank you so much.